Okay. Um, he starts out talking about monopolies and characteristics. So, sole seller of a product. So, kind of one monopoly, one firm. High barriers to entry, and if you see high barriers to entry, there can be economic profit and economic loss in the long run. And price maker, sole seller of product, high barriers to entry, which could lead to economic gains or economic losses, price maker. All right. He then talks about monopoly resources. So sometimes you're a monopoly because you own a key resource. And he talks about like De Beers diamonds, and they own the diamond mines, and that would be a key resource. Okay. All right. And then he talks about government created monopolies. And that government creates monopolies in two ways. One is a patent. So, like, say you're trying to invent something, it gives you the incentive to spend money trying to get the invention because if you develop it, you're the only one who could sell it. So, no one could copy it. So, you get like a patent for 20 years. So, say you develop a drug that could cure cancer. All right. You might have spent $1 million to research it, and you have the incentive to research it because now you have a monopoly on the drug. If you have a monopoly, you could charge a higher price, make more profits, but produce less quantity because monopolies charge a higher price and produce less quantity. Now, there's also the copyright, which would protect authors. So say I'm writing a book, it prevents Tucker from just copying what I'm writing. Okay, same thing gives you the incentive to spend time to do research, so you have this monopoly. All right. He then talks about natural monopolies, which I have up here. A single firm can produce the entire quantity at a lower cost than several firms. Okay, a single firm can produce the entire quantity at a lower cost than several firms. Okay. All right. And here you have the downward sloping ATC due to huge fixed costs and small variable costs. All right. So a downward sloping ATC. Now, whenever you have a downward sloping ATC, you also have economies of scale. What's economies of scale? As output is increasing, ATC is decreasing. As output is increasing, ATC is decreasing. Okay? Now, they don't have an MC curve here, but it would have to be below ATC. All right? ATC is lower if one firm services all 1,000 homes than if two firms had 500 each. Because it's the fixed cost that really drive up the cost. All right. This downward sloping ATC will be a graph that is on your quiz. And I think they can only ask, is it a natural monopoly? Is there economies of scale? Or what a natural monopoly does. It's a single firm that can produce the entire quantity at a lower cost than several firms. All right. And then the favorite type of question is monopolies versus competition, perfect competition. So a monopoly is a price maker. It has a downward sloping curve, and it has no close substitutes. So monopoly is a price maker, a downward sloping curve, and no close substitutes. Perfect competition is a price taker, a perfectly elastic curve, and many substitutes. Okay? A price taker a perfectly elastic curve, and many substitutes. Okay. All right. All right. This is just like a monopoly. All right. MC equals MR is the profit maximizer. All right. So then he talks about monopoly revenue. All right. And here we would go. All right. So the monopoly, do we have an ATC curve maybe? Yeah. So monopoly total revenue is price times quantity. All right. Where the MR hits the axis is the highest total revenue. So the monopoly revenue is total revenue equal price times quantity. And the highest is where MR hits the axis. And then he talks about the profit maximizer, where MC equals MR. On this graph, MC equals MR. The only difference for a monopoly is since it's a monopoly, it could charge a higher price and go up to the demand curve. Okay. Now, they might ask you the profit. You take the price down to the ATC and across, and that's your profit box. Now, say they label this P4 and this line P1. The average unit of profit would be P4 minus P1, that line. The total profit would be P4 minus P1 times Q. P4 minus P1 times Q. Okay. Now, if I take the profit maximizer up to the demand curve and the demand curve down to the MC, this triangle, notice the point of the triangle is where MC hits demand, which is allocatively efficient. So the point of the triangle is pointing to the socially optimal. But this triangle is dead weight loss. Now, if they give you numbers, just remember you figure out the dead weight area of the triangle by 1/2 base times height. So they can give you something like this and ask you to figure out the dead weight loss. The second thing in a graph like this is they could figure out consumer surplus. That would be taking the price here above the price and below demand would be this triangle, which would be consumer surplus. Okay? They could ask you to figure out that. They don't usually ask about producer surplus because it's not an area that is easy to figure out, but it's below the price and above MC. Okay? So a quick recap. Total revenue, price times quantity. Highest revenue where MR hits the axis. Profit per unit, the price P4, minus where it hits the ATC curve, P1. Total profit, P4, minus P1 times Q. Dead weight loss, this triangle right here. Consumer surplus above the price, below demand. Okay? Those are the things I think could ask on a regular monopoly. All right. We're good. Oh, geez. All sorts of problems now. All sorts of problems. I think I'm back. Things should be good. Okay. And price times ATC is kind of what I said. P minus ATC times Q is profit. Okay. All right. Now, and we did this, weight loss. Okay. and consumer and producer surplus. Okay. So here in this one, again, consumer surplus above the price, below demand. Just use your typical tools. Producer surplus below the price, above supply. And that triangle would be deadweight loss. All right. Now, I think he next talks about price discrimination. All right. In the real world, perfect price discrimination is not possible. Okay. What it is selling the same good at different prices. All right. Selling the same good at different prices. All right. And these are some things, but I wouldn't say they were perfect. But let's see, can we get a graph here of price discrimination? That's what we would really, no, we can't. All right. So let me go back to one of the monopoly graphs because that will be the easiest. So in price discrimination, first of all, so it's selling the same good at different prices. There is in perfect price discrimination, there is no deadweight loss and no consumer surplus. No deadweight loss, no consumer surplus. Okay. What happens is MR, like race MR, and it becomes demand curve. Demand equals MR. All right. And then where MR equals MC here, because this is now MR, that is your quantity for price discrimination. The yellow is your profit. Okay. Now, there is, again, no consumer surplus and no deadweight loss. The last thing they talked about is public policy. And all you really need to know is all the antitrust acts are trying to curb monopoly power and promote competition. So curb monopoly power and promote competition. Okay. I'm now to switch over, I hope, to the practice quiz. Okay. I think I did that. And if there's any questions, please put the number in the chat and I will be glad to answer them. And if you have a question on something else, you could obviously chat it too. Okay. There's a couple of questions. 2 people with 3. All right, everyone with 3. All right, let's get 3 first. Okay. Granting a pharmaceutical company a patent for a new medicine leads to. All right. So, 1, a product that is priced higher than it would be without exclusive rights. That's true because you're giving it like a monopoly. Monopolies charge higher. 2, an incentive for pharmaceutical companies to invest. Yeah, there's an incentive to invest because if I invest and I develop the cure for cancer, I have this patent that no one else could copy my discovery for 20 years and I could be a monopoly. 3, no, monopolies produce at a higher price in lower quantities. So it's 1 and 2, and that would be as in broccoli. All right. Those people who asked about 3, does that make sense? Okay. Marco, you're good. Who else? Yes. Evan, does that make sense to you? All right. So, patent is I discover a drug and you cannot copy that drug. So therefore, I have an exclusive right to sell that drug and no one else can. So because I have no competition, I could charge a higher price. Did that answer your question? Okay. All right. Any other questions that people have besides question three? All right. Let's see what this next one is. I scroll down. Question five. And is there another one? It just is the same scenario. Yes, same scenario, Tucker, and same charts. Let me go down to five. All right. Marginal revenue for a monopoly curve. All right. So I'm going to look at this monopoly curve right here. All right. The marginal revenue, which is curve B, demand is curve A. All right. Start, all right, at the same point as the demand curve. Remember, demand is DARP. So if it starts at the demand curve, it's also starting at the average revenue curve. So it's one and three. It's not starting at the marginal cost curve, which would be letter C, and the ATC would be letter D. So therefore, the answer is one and three. And I don't know what that is. One and three is that what that's C. Okay. All right, let me open the chat. And I don't know who asked about five. Does that make sense to you now? Okay. All right, we got five out of the way. All right, now we want to make sure A is demand, B is marginal revenue, C is marginal cost, D is average total cost. That same graph will be on your quiz tomorrow. So we know the letters. Okay. In this scenario, it's asking what the marginal revenue is, right? Rather, the firm's marginal cost. It's a profit maximizer. MR equals MC. If MR is 30, MC must be B as in broccoli 30. Now, what else could they ask you? They could ask you the price. Again, we go to Mr. Dark. Demand equals average revenue equals price. So the price is 60. They could ask you the total revenue. That would be 500. 500 times 60. They could ask you the total cost. That'd be 500 times 34. They could ask you the profit, and that would be total revenue minus total cost. Those are about the five things they could ask in that scenario. So you could work them all out, right? I gave you the price. I told you total revenue is price times quantity. Total cost is quantity times average total cost. Total revenue, I mean, profit is total revenue minus total cost. I want to scroll down to this chart, and price and average revenue are the same. So whenever you figure out the price, you figure it out. So say for the first one, the price is 35. For the second one, the price is 32 because the average revenue is 32. Okay. On the bottom, the 10th one, the price is 8. And the ninth one, the price is 11. Is there anything on this chart you could not figure out? Because if you can't, let me know, because this chart's going to be on the quiz, but I have no idea what they're going to ask you. Okay, let me scroll down. Marginal revenue and total revenue. All right, total revenue is just price times quantity. So like the first one, it's 35 times 1 is 35. Second one, the price is 32 because the average revenue is 32. 32 times 2 is 64. Marginal revenue would be 35 minus 0 is 35 for the first one. And then 64 minus 35 would be 29 for the second one. Is that what you needed for the marginal and total revenues? Does that make sense for you to do the rest? Anyone else with anything on the chart? Because the chart's definitely going to be on there. Okay. If I'm you guys, I'm filling out the whole chart. Tucker, it's hard for me to go over only because it's hard for me to write. So 29 times 3 would be 87. 87 minus 64 would be 23. If I know the total revenue is 87 and the next marginal revenue is 17, I know the total revenue is 104. 104 divided by 4 would be 26. If the price is 26, the average revenue is 26. Okay? 23 times 5 is 115. This would be 104. 115 minus 104 is 11. If the price is 23, the average revenue is 23. 6, total revenue is 120. Divided by 6 is 20. So the price is 20, the average revenue is 20. It's 120 minus 115. The marginal revenue is 5. Okay. Okay, did that give you enough to yes. Miguel, average revenue equals price, dark. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to scroll down. All right. Is there anything on this chart people can't figure out? All right. Let me go to the chat first. See what people are chatting. At zero revenue, total revenue is 0 because it's 170 times 0. Now at 0 unit, fixed cost is 100 because total cost is 100 and you have no variable cost. Okay, but number 4, how do I find? All right, so for number 4, 4 times 130 gives me 520. That's my total revenue. 3 times 140 gives me 420. 520 minus 420 gives me a marginal revenue of 100. Now, I would go through all those and figure out the marginal revenue and the marginal cost, and then figure out the profit maximizer. Where does MC equal MR? Because they could ask you that. And therefore, you have went through the chart and you've been able to figure that out. Okay? Otherwise, they could ask you anything, you know. Just remember here, DARP. So if they ask you what demand is, what average revenue is, what price is, they're all the same. If they ask you total revenue, it's price times quantity. Marginal cost would be 140 minus 100 is 40. 184 minus 140 is 44. Now they ask you the average revenue for the 7th product, That's the price. That's 100. I'm trying to scroll down to see for the profit for this chart. All you have to do is total revenue minus total. Yes, that's exactly right, Miguel. Now, they asked also for 10, what is the total variable cost? Well, if I know that fixed cost is 100 and fixed cost plus variable cost equal total cost, I go at 6 units. My total cost is 395 equals fixed cost of 100. The variable cost has to be 295. Okay, something else in the chat. All right. No, PR is price times quantity. Total revenues, say, Ryan, for the first one is 160 total revenue. Then for the second, 150 times 2 is 300. 140 times 3 is 420. 130 times 4 is 520. And I think I was figuring out the marginal revenue for the fourth one would be 520 minus 420 would give you 100. Does that make sense, Brian? All right. All right. I'm going to scroll down some more. All right. I got this. This monopoly firm price discriminates. All right. Price discriminates. No consumer surplus, no deadweight loss. That's price discrimination. So the answer would be A0. Now, if they ask, what is the quantity that a price discriminating graph would do? It would be where MC equals demand, because in price discrimination, MR, demand equals MR, so MR equals MC at the 400 mark. Now, how about if they said this is a regular monopoly? All right, if it's a non-price discriminating or a regular monopoly, I go where MR equals MC up to price and it's 25 and down to quantity and it's 200. Okay. If they ask what is the deadweight loss, I take MC equals MR price down the MC curve, and that triangle would be deadweight loss. Regular, and I'll get your answer. And then for a regular monopoly, consumer surplus would be up here. Sorry for the scribbly lines. Okay, let me see. Can I get what's going on in the chat? We got that fixed. Does MC always equal to ATC? No. Just in this one, it does. It doesn't always equal. All right. Any other questions? I try to go over as many things as I think they could ask. On this thing, make sure when you read 1511, is it a regular monopoly or is it a price discriminating monopoly? Because there'll be two totally different answers. Any other questions people have? All right, I'm scrolling down. Question 12. All right, for some reason, it's not letting me scroll down to question 12. Maybe now. Up. All right, here we go. Question 12. How much output? Like John, Z, it's just a regular monopoly. You go where MC equals MR, and you take it straight down to K and up to the demand curve to B. So price would be B and output would be K. On all of these, you find the profit maximizer. Yeah. All right. In 11, get back up there. If it's price discrimination, first of all, there is no consumer surplus and no producer surplus. Why? In price discrimination, you're paying, like if you're willing to spend 20, you spend 20. So there's no consumer surplus. If you're willing to spend 40, you spend 40. So there's no consumer surplus. All right. So there's no consumer surplus because you're also producing, because there's no MR curve, you're producing where MC crosses demand because demand equals MR. So therefore, you're allocatively efficient. There's no dead weight loss. All right. Also, for price discrimination, since um, there is no demand curve. All right, you're producing where there's no MR curve. Rather, you're producing where demand equals MR. So the profit maximizer would be where MR equals MC, which would be at 400. For a regular monopoly, it's the profit maximizer. MC equals MR, which is 200, and up to price, which is 25. In both these, you a regular monopoly, you have consumer surplus above the price below demand, and you have deadweight loss. That I don't know who asked that, but that did that make get it for you? Okay. All right. Any other questions? I think if you think of all the scenarios, you do the charts, you look at these graphs, you should be in good shape for tomorrow's quiz. I will be in my room at 7:45. If anyone has questions earlier in the morning, and then I will also